Hey guys, these are our notes on percent. So we've been reviewing fractions to prep for this, and so we're finally going to get into calculating different types of percents and how we find kind of missing pieces. So if you haven't already, pause this video and download the note sheet or get it out, whatever you've got. If you've got a paper copy, and pause this video. It's going to be a little bit longer, so just pause this video as you need to. There's a lot of information, so pause, make sure you're caught up, and if you have any questions, let me know. So the first thing we're going to talk about is finding the percent of a whole. Excuse me, and now I'm not sure. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I wasn't able to write for a second. So we're calculating the percent of a whole, and an example of this would be, what is 3% of 10? So they want us to find 3%, that's the percent of 10, which is our whole. So the steps to do this, so the first step is to change the percent to a decimal. And if you remember from last week, we move the percent 2 places to the left, or we divide by 100. So we have, I'll just change colors here so you guys can see this. We have 3%, we go 1, 2, and it becomes 0.03, because we would stick a 0 there. So that's step 1. Step 2 is to change the word of to multiply. So instead of, we're now thinking of that as multiply. And then step 3 is to just do the math. And what that looks like is we have 0.03 of, but we change that to multiply, of 10. And we multiply by the whole. So we do this on our calculator, and when we multiply by 10, it just moves it. So now we have 0.3. Sorry, I'm going to rewrite that here. So we have 0.3. So what that means is 0.3 is 3% of 10. And that is our answer. So let's walk through another example. And it says 30% of 40. So 30 is our percent and 40 is our whole. So step 1 is we change 30 to a decimal. So we go 1, 2, and we have 0.3. We change of to multiply, and 40. So now if we use a calculator, which guys, I would recommend if you want to do it by hand, that's fine. It's just going to take you a little bit longer. So 0.3 times 40, and that equals, sorry guys, hold on. And that equals 12. So that means that 12 is 30% of 40. Okay, pause the video, make sure you're all caught up, and once you're ready, hit play and we're gonna move on. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about finding the whole if you're given the part and a percent. So what we've got to do here is we want to look for words like is and of. And sorry guys, I'm going to pause you for just a second there. Okay. So, sorry, we look for words like is and of. Those are kind of key words that we look for when we're doing this. And we can use kind of this part-whole ratio. And I'm going to write this in a different color. Maybe you guys should write it and circle it if you don't have a different color. But we use this. We use part over whole, which is equal to is over of, which is equal to percent over 100. And we can use this little like ratio, this little part whole fraction to solve a lot of these problems. And really we only need like two parts. So we either need like part and whole, or we either need like is and of, which this is kind of the most common that we're going to be using to solve these problems. And just keep in mind that this 100 is always going to be 100 because a percent is out of 100, so that's never going to change. That one is a constant. Okay, it's always going to be 100. So an example we might see is 30 is 25% of what? So that's kind of an example question we would see. And the steps, and I'm going to write these a little lower just so we have room to like work it up top. The steps, okay, the first one is to set up the is of fraction. So we do that by looking for different words. So this says 30 is. So 30 is our is. It goes on our top. Is 25%. So we know that 25 is going to go on our percent, and 100 never changes. So we have an is. We have an is, which is 30. We have a percent, which is 25. And of what? So this of piece is what we don't know. So we're going to use a variable there. So now we have this fraction set up, and remember this 100 never changes. It's always the same. So we now have 30 over x is equal to 25 over 100. Now we can just do what we've already been practicing, and we can cross multiply. Step 2. And step 3 is going to be to solve. We're going to kind of do those steps together, and I'm actually going to move this down a little bit, you guys. So you might have to reorder your notes a little bit, and I'm sorry. Okay, so we're going to cross multiply. So now we have 25x is equal to 30 times 100. If you're not sure, use a calculator, but because there's just a lot of zeros there, we can use logic, right? We just add 2 zeros to 30. And it doesn't matter if those were written in a different order. You could have 3,000 equals 25x. It wouldn't change. So now we just solve for x. So we draw our line. X is being multiplied by 25. We undo multiplication with division. So we're going to divide both sides by 25. And we're going to use a calculator. And I punch this on my calculator, and I get 120, which means, so that's our missing piece, right? That's our x. That was our what. So now we know that 30 is 25% of 120. And that is our solution. So, and when we're solving for the missing part or the variable, whatever you want to think of it as. So let's try another example, and this is going to be the last one we do on this kind. So if I were you, I would maybe pause and try it on your own, and then hit play if you need some help. So our example is going to be 12 is 10% of what number? And this percent, you can always just change that to a percent sign. Doesn't change anything. So pause the video and try it on your own. Okay. So I'm going to set up my is and of fraction. So 12 is, so 12 is my is. 10% of what? And we know that's always over 100. I'm going to cross multiply, so I get 1200 equals 10x. I'm going to solve for my missing piece, divide by 10. We get x is equal to 120. So that means that 12 is 10% of 120. So pause the video, make sure you're caught up, and press play when you're ready to move on to the last piece of this. Okay, so now we're going to talk about finding the percent when you're given the part and the whole. And an example that we might see of this is what percent of 80 is 60? So we're given the whole, of is our whole, and is our part, right? Of is our whole. We can see that if we come back over here a little bit. Of is our whole, and is our part. So we are going to use these same kind of steps that we talked about in the last section. And the first one is to use the is of fraction. That is kind of the first part. So we know is 60, so 60 is our is. Of 80, we know that, it says of right there. And we're going to set that equal to the percent, which we don't know. So, and if you want to put x there, that's fine. I'm just going to use percent. And 100 never changes. So there's our fraction. I'm actually, sorry guys, I'm going to move that down so we can write all the steps together. I'm really sorry. I keep reordering these on you. Okay. And step 2 is, and sorry, I moved it down a little far because we're going to do another example. We're going to put it back up here, okay? Sorry guys, a little crazy. Okay, step 2 is to change the fraction to a decimal. And we do that, if you remember from last week, we do that by dividing the numerator or the top by the denominator or the bottom. So really, guys, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. You don't actually need this piece of that, just because, I mean, that's what we're finding, but we're not actually going to like cross multiply and solve with this, so you don't actually need that piece. So we're going to divide. So really what we're going to do is 60 divided by 80, and on a calculator here we get 0.75. And then step 3 is to change the decimal to a percent, and we do that by multiplying by 100, which was from our previous video. So now we got to do 0.75 times 100, which just means we move this 2 places, and we get 75%. Okay? So now we're going to do just one last example. So I recommend you pause this, try it on your own, and if you're struggling, come back and watch it so you can get some clarification. So we're going to say, let's see, what percent of 95 is 19? So we're still looking for keywords like is and of, kind of like we were, like these two kind of go hand in hand a lot of the stuff. So we're still looking for keywords like is and of. So pause it, try it on your own, and come back and press play when you're ready. Okay, so to set up my is, I know is 19 and of 95, so it goes on the bottom. So step one is I set up my is of fraction. Oh, now I'm going to change my fraction to a decimal by dividing, and 19 divided by 95. Oh. Excuse me, hold on. 19 divided by 95 is, so we would do this, that's what you're punching in your calculator, equals 0.2. Now my last step is to change that to a decimal, which means I take 0.2 and I multiply it by 100, and which really means I go 1, 2, which gives me 20%. So we know 19 is 20% of 95. So that's just a quick run through of this. I would recommend, now that you've got these notes, watch this as many times as you need to, and go, there's a percent of a number wheel, and it's got some blanks on it, and you guys can color that and do whatever you want with it, but it's kind of got some blanks and missing pieces that are a great way for you guys to practice and try a few things out. So go back, try to fill in your number wheel. There's an answer key available for your number wheel. And so just try it out and see how it goes. Thanks.